Tuesday, and this is Trekland HQ, I think, yes. And we are live. Guest, UK author Lyndon Smith and Star Trek Nation, plus some important Trekland news. All today on number 342, yes, of Trekland Tuesdays Live. With me, Dr. Trek Larry Nemechek, coming to you here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 and Trekland Treks, looking to bring you some sanity, clarity, and a bigger picture in all things Star Trek. I want to welcome you back to another Tuesday with you. Hey, we have got some news here out of Trekland. There's been some big Star Trek news today that I've been wondering when it was going to bop along. But I want to welcome everybody watching us from around the world. This is why we do this at this time of day. If you're with us, please have your chat window turned on because we've got a wonderful TTL chat community. They are all over the world, as evidenced by today and today's guest. Yeah, jump in. Let us know where you're from, what's going on, what the weather's like, how you're doing. Jump in there now. I'm going to do kind of a hybrid show today. Just know that as you're in the chat, if you are coming to us from YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, share it around the world. We are still catching up on YouTube, okay? But if you're on YouTube or Twitch, you're going to see all the comments. If you're only on Facebook, you're only going to see Facebook, all righty? Again, thank you so much for being with us live. Hey, if you are watching us later on YouTube, that's awesome. Please leave a comment when you do watch the show. But remember, you could be joining us live if things can break that way. We have a lot of people watching with the sound off and the captions on, which is awesome too, and chiming in still. But no, today is, again, we're going to have some news here in just a minute. But I always love it when Real Trek World helps out Trekland Tuesdays Live with some real news. And everybody's reacting to the news, which I've been wondering when it was going to be out there, that Section 31 at last, after 8 years, whatever it's been, is finally 7 years, is finally in production. Well, they've been in production. They're filming. They're on stage filming as of yesterday, Monday. And not only that, but then Paramount Plus deigned to give us the cast list finally. Somebody besides Michelle Yeoh, who the show was about, right? And so it's all over. You can read all your favorite news sources. But just to say, joining her in the cast, which had not been talked about at all, much less the character breakdown and all. But Omari Hardwick from Power, Casey Roll from Hannibal, Sam Richardson, the Emmy winner, best known lately for Ted Lasso, Sven Roygrock from One Piece, haven't seen that, Robert Kaczynski from Pacific Rim, Humberly Gonzalez from Ginny and Georgia, and James Hiroyuki Lau. Sorry about that. We're going to get used to all these names as usual. There's another cast to assimilate. He was most recently on Barry. Awesome show. So huge cast, very diverse. It's out there. They started shooting yesterday. And again, this is a one-off. Olatunde Osunami is directing, who was a big producer-director for Discovery. Craig Sweeney, who is one of the original writers on Discovery, and was probably in on the creation, as we get into it, of Empress Georgiou, is in all the Secret Hideout cast of suspects is down as executive producers. They're finally making it official today. So anyway, this is, a lot of people have doubts about Section 31, and I get it. It's the dark side. A lot of people think there's no room for Section 31 in the Star Trek universe, that it was a creation of DS9, and even though it was retconned back in the Archer days at the tail end of Enterprise, we never had a reference in the original series, never had a reference in Next Gen, although you can point to incidents that could have been Section 31 incidents. And then, of course, nothing in Voyager either, but woven all the way through Discovery, a big part of that, and even bopping up at times in a little bit of Picard even. So here's the thing. Just because Section 31 has occupied a different place in these shows, remember, they're taking place over centuries. And my headcanon, my gap filling, canon smoothing has been that Section 31 obviously predates the Federation, but it occupies a different role over times. And a couple of the times we've seen it most fleshed out have been over the centuries. So a lot of people are dismayed that they love Michelle Yeoh, but they're dismayed that this is getting the attention of a movie. I still think this could be a backdoor pilot for a series, just not with Michelle Yeoh, whose life has totally changed. She's obviously devoted to the part. She's obviously could have walked away from this and had it dissolved, but she is very much a part of this. It is a movie, and assuming it doesn't bomb, a show without her could very well go on. But that's all in the future. That's all in the cards. What I'll just say, the people who this is not on their dance card, just remember that Section 31 could be different things to different people and in different eras. And for all the people worried about a deep, dark, foreboding, Sloan-type, anti-Federation, anti-optimistic, futuristic values, this Section 31, with the sly humor that was evolved. I know there's nothing to me exciting about living in the mirror universe. It's drab and dreary and would become one note and monotonous. But you saw Empress Giorgio start to turn with her late development. Before they shipped her off through Carl, the Guardian of Forever, you saw her starting to turn. And what if, just saying this, what if Section 31 is a Wild Wild West Mission Impossible kind of caper tone? I've heard some rumblings, some murmuring that initially Section 31 was going to be darker, but all the years of delay, being bumped off the tarmac for Strange New Worlds first, and now being shortened to a movie, only if nothing else, only a movie with Michelle Yeoh and Giorgio, maybe going on with a real cast. But whatever, that the current tone might be a little more of a caper romp, a lighthearted tone, not so dreary dark, which would be a relief to all the folks who were dreading. I'm not talking about people who want to just see legacy first among anything, but I'm talking about people who, on its merits, are not thrilled with Section 31 series. To tell the truth, I never have been either, but I would be interested to see the world of the Federation, Gene Roddenberry's universe, viewed through a caper romp for the good guys, under the, without all the posh badges and gold braid. I don't know. I could see it. It could be sly. It could be a slice of humor that would be maybe like Lower Decks, only toned down into, I don't know, the series that are out there like that. So some of the cool character dramas here in the US that were on USA Network. Anyway, whatever we think, it's happening. It's happening for this thing starting Monday with this incredible cast. And of course, they'll be flooding the social airwaves with updates and things as we go along. The other question to me is it going to be out at the end of the year, or will it be on into 2025 when this is out? Because once Lower Decks is done, August, September-ish, October-ish, there's nothing there the last 2-3 months of the year. We still don't know when Netflix over here, Rogue Agent, is going to plop in season 2 of Prodigy in amongst the Discovery send-off and then Lower Decks, which is going to be April, May, June-ish, and probably August-y, September-y, October-y. So no, it's not 50 weeks a year of fresh Trek. We've got Prodigy hovering around. And will the 2-hour movie of Section 31 be a 2024 late offering? Because they're just now filming. Just bear in mind that they, all through the strike time, they were working nonstop, madcap on everything physical, right? So visual effects could go, the physical sets and costumes and all of that could be ready to go. It just was tweaking things and corralling probably the last of the casting and getting the logistics down. So here we go. We're off and running. Section 31 is there. Whatever you think about it, it'll be interesting to watch. Maybe you'll be pleasantly surprised if all of you trepidatious about it. And it's happening. So we will see. Interesting cast. Another bunch of faces and names to get to know and know through a Star Trek lens. Now, I have some news of my own to share as we watch this. And again, I'm going to get to the chat maybe after we're done with our guest today. Excuse me. So you want to hang on for that, all right? Because right now I want to jump to our guest, who I found totally online, which was interesting. Just I slid into, not into the DMs, but slid into the socials, and just had kind of an interesting take. Lyndon Smith is our author. I've since gotten a copy of his book, Star Trek Nation, but the whole concept of an Englishman's view of America as viewed through a Star Trek lens was very intriguing. So everybody, why don't we welcome Lyndon to Trekland Tuesdays Live. Hello, sir.
Hi, Larry.
Hey. So since the beginning, I've had Trekland Tuesdays Live back when it was just a get on Facebook Live and go. I've done this at this hour of the day so we could have folks from most everything I do at Trekland, especially Portal 47. I try to look for the global audience, and primarily with Trek, that includes the Brits and Europeans and as a focus. Although we've had South Americans, we've got folks from Australia in, from the outback even. A couple from time to time from Africa, and then across the continent, Germans and Austrians. So we've got a good audience here. So Lyndon, why don't you're in Somerset, I believe.
Yes.
And your fandom, you have the fandom cred to go back, but this is a self-published book. Why don't you tell us, like, what was the, where you're coming from, and what was the inclination? What motivated you doing this?
Yeah, sure. Such a, thanks so much for inviting me on the show, by the way. Because Star Trek Continues will always be something I always think about, and it's such a great show.
Okay.
Such a great show. But now where this came from was because I'm into engineering. I've always been into engineering. My father was into it, and brother's into engineering. And I was always fascinated by technological progress, really. And I think America's like that as well, because especially Star Trek, I always thought, because watching it from when I was a kid, it was like latest technology, all these fantastic gadgets they have. And so I wrote a book about engineering a few years ago about what progress has been made, called Why You Can't Get a Rocket to Mars, actually. And a lot of that was about Star Trek, because I was thinking, why haven't some of these gadgets, well, some of them have occurred, of course, but why haven't more of them occurred? And that got me thinking about Star Trek in terms of, I've always also been fascinated by how the Yanks and the Brits view each other. Having lived over there for a while and visited, I don't know how many times. It's just totally fascinating for me. And so this is where this book came from, the genesis of that, of viewing America through the lens, through the lens of Star Trek. So, and because I think many things about what Gene Roddenberry said, and where he was coming from, is true of America as a nation. The optimism, the interest in technology, the cutting edge of it, and all the rest of it. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully, it's meant to be a comedy, by the way. I hope we get a few laughs out of it.
Well, it was very personal. And again, I haven't got all the way through. I probably had a third of it, but there's a lot of like personal essay, and you do go off on tangents at times. And again, this is a self-published book. A lot of your own original artwork is in here. You prepped me the book that and as a self-published author, I appreciate you sending me a hard copy. There's a PDF, or I don't know if how you're selling it, but you can tell us that. But I know the PDF had everything in color, and it's black and white in here. Yeah. But again, you kind of like go back and you're looking at American and British, I don't want to say history because that'll make it sound dry, but kind of a personal slant, or not a personal slant, that sounds political, but a viewpoint.
Yeah.
Before you get to the Trek. But again, I'm that was kind of a broad background, but was there anything in particular sparked you about I've got to put this down on paper and come up with this idea and develop it?
Well, it's probably just when I was in the States, getting so much stick off the guys in the lab. I was working for all the British idiosyncrasies or whatever else. So, and the language usage is so fascinating. The Brits are a bit obsessed with the English language usage. You know that, don't you?
Well, their name's on it, so I understand that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's certainly fascinating how certain words in American usage are kind of, people think they've changed it, but they're actually using the old words, like pocketbook for wallet, and certainly a lot of other stuff. It's actually old English words, so they've actually more conservative in the usage than we are. So it's quite fascinating. But it's mostly about how the two countries view each other. And, I'm thinking about lots of things local to me as well. Like, for example, Cabot. I don't know if you're familiar with Cabot, but he came across from Bristol, actually, in 1776, I think. No, it's not 17. What am I talking about?
Oh, Cabot, Henry Cabot.
Yeah.
Is it pronounced Cabot?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I never knew that. Just
he came from Bristol. Was it 1497? I got it in the book. I'm trying to remember. And he discovered the North American continent. And everybody thinks Columbus discovered America, but Columbus went to the West Indies, and he went to
Right.
a bit later to South America, Central America. But the first guy to get to North American continent was Cabot, and that's fascinating me. They built a replica of his ship in Bristol docks, Matthew, using the original techniques, and they go across to North America once in a while.
Now I know Columbus's has mainly been laughed off because if nothing else, they'll talk about the Vikings hitting Greenland and Iceland.
Yeah.
In around 1000 AD or so. But
Yeah.
where did okay, now I have to say Cabot.
Well, you might be right for all I know.
Where did Cabot land?
Well, Newfoundland.
Okay, so it was still okay, which is still,
yeah, but he went across onto the mainland as well.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't just hang around on the island or whatever. He went across onto the mainland, and this was a couple of years before, so many years before Columbus got to the continent. Got to South America.
Well, even South America and Central America, but still not North America. So
no.
If the Chamber of Commerces are fighting over who's what, that's still a valid claim.
Yeah, but there's lots of what it is, and what it is about American Britain as well. That's one thing that fascinates me. You just walk around here and there's some reference to America. Somebody went over to the States, or somebody did something that's connected with all the old buildings and all the old things here. I think like in Glastonbury's near here, and Harvard, I think, was some connection with an old building there. Just everywhere you go, there's some connection with America, I think, especially in the southwest of England.
Yeah, well, and that's true here. I know the East Coast is that way, so maybe not so much Central and the West, but you never know.
You're right. I mean, I used to live in Berkeley. We pronounce it Berkeley in the UK, but it's of course the original place, Berkeley. Berkeley. There's a Virginia, isn't it? In Virginia, there was a Berkeley, wasn't it? All these places are, they're coming over.
There's a Berkeley, California, where the UC University of California is too, but it's no. But I always go back to there's the song A Nightingale Sang in Berkeley Square, and I called it Berkeley Square until I heard someone sing it, but they're using the British pronunciation.
Yeah.
No, the first time I got to Europe in Star Trek world at a con was in I was a guest at in Germany, I guess, but the first time I was over, not as a guest but just covering, was kind of an infamous convention big show at the Albert Hall in London, the Generations show, which commemorated the Generations movie, and a friend of mine, Eric Stillwell, produced this show in conjunction with a guy who later wound up going to prison for fraud, which nobody knew at the time.
No.
But they put on 2 annual shows, and one I covered as press, and the second I was a behind the scenes guest at. But that was my first time to go global, international. And you'd always, as a kid, I always knew outside of the States and Canada, and poor Canada always gets lumped in with this like it's the 51st state. But you always knew that the UK, Germany, and Australia were the 3 big overseas markets. And I found out later on why. But, ahead of the rest of the world. So you knew that was there, but it's always been fascinating to me. And we've got folks in chat today. I have Portal 47 members. It's always been fun to go over when I get over for cons on the continent and in England, and to know foreign fans keep me foreign to America. Global fans keep me honest to get out of even my unintentional blinders, and ruts, and remember things. And it's, I guess things like Memory Alpha and all are good too, because they will have the international dates, not just, for debuts. And when, say, like when Star Trek back in the day was it first on the BBC?
Well, when I was a kid, it was on, that's where it all came from. I was a little kid, it was BBC Two, was it 6 o'clock or something like in the evening? So it wasn't a kiddie show. It was on in the evenings, adult show. And absolutely fascinating for us in those days.
Well, that's real quick, that's because I want you to talk, but that's, finally, I saw someone say the markets where Star Trek got big, the UK, Germany, and Australia, are where the programmers who bought it, whether it was a national or private, they put it on in the evening and treated it like an adult show. A lot of the countries got it and put it on. Their attitude in the 70s was still sci-fi, kiddie show. And they would put it on in the mornings, the afternoons, on the weekends. And whatever the initial take of the buyer in each individual country market did, that's what the public kind of viewed it as. And so out of the gate, the fandom got big in the places where it was run as an adult show in an adult time slot. And it's like ever since then, they've been, so places like Japan, you would think, or even like Italy, France, some of the, they've been trying to catch up to that. So And that's
Yeah,
what I
I
thought was
think you're right.
fascinating.
I think that's it. I mean, it was an adult show, as you say, in the UK. The BBC takes itself seriously. Well, it took the show seriously, put it on at a peak time, and it had a real cult following. I think in the UK, Star Trek following is huge, probably second only to the States or something,
Mhm.
because
Oh, sure.
there's clubs and there's real enthusiasm for it. And people go over to the States to the auctions, those big auctions they run once in a while, and buy loads of memorabilia and so on and so forth.
Well, they
Yes,
come over for the big conventions too, as well. As more Americans are going over to the UK for conventions when they're worth it and when they're happening and all that.
yeah.
Well, so let me get back to the book because I was just on the cusp of getting there, but I want to ask you anyway. So what specifically about, first of all, you were talking about visiting the States a lot. How much have you said lived even, I think. How much
Well, I
have
lived
you
in the
been
States
over?
for a while, at Penn State, yeah. So I talk about in the car. I met my wife in the States, and so for me, it's all got romantic.
Is she American?
No, she's from Europe. She's
Okay.
from.
You just happened to meet in America. Okay.
She was a Fulbright scholar. I don't know if you know the Fulbright scheme. But
Mm-hmm.
that's such a difficult scheme to get onto. But she was a Fulbright scholar, and so that was an interesting connection there. So I talk about Fulbright in the book, because I like to talk about people, historical figures who are very foresighted, like a lot of foresight, Woodrow Wilson or wherever it was who set up, and the Fulbright guy himself, and all the rest of it. We met in the States, yeah. And so, what was your question again?
What I was getting to was how long were you actually, when you would say you lived here, you visited, like how much, what does that amount to time wise?
Well, I didn't live there that long. I lived about a year there at Penn State, but I probably visited the States more or less every year since '96.
Well, that's a lot of time. Okay.
Yeah, so I've been all over and absolutely fascinated by it.
And beyond that, because I saw some of your photos, not just a lot of European fans I know come, but it's always, it's Florida, it's the East Coast, and some but you've been all over. You've been, you talked about driving the Midwest and the wide open crossing the interstates and everything.
Yeah. I mean, we did 1,000 miles in a day through Richmond, Virginia, from Hawks Nest all the way through New Washington and ended up back to Penn State. But yeah, all over the place. The South is fascinating for me.
And across the West and everything. Well, okay, so not just a tourist's East Coast view of America. So what is it about, what the nitty gritty here to me is, what about Star Trek colored your perceptions of America, either before or after, or, coming and going?
Well, I think America's a very optimistic country with a lot of faith in the future, in technology and what we can do. And I think that was a major part of Gene Roddenberry's vision. And it's part of the culture, a positive view of the future. I mean, there's so much dystopian stuff around about science fiction futures.
Then and now.
Yeah, it's so refreshing to see some guy who thinks we've got something actually to look forward to. Because if you've got something you can look towards, a future, then it's more likely to be. If you think about it, it's more likely to happen. I think, if you think life's going to be hell, it's more likely to be. Basically, America, that idea of keep your sunny side up, accentuate the positive, is for me part of the culture in a big way. The JFK, you can shoot for the moon. 61.
The new frontier, final frontier. Yeah.
The final frontier. I mean, the West was the original frontier. Now the final frontier is space, isn't it? And it's iconic. The whole thing fascinates me really in terms of the Star Trek thing. I mean, the idea that it was a show they tried to cancel. It's like anything else. It's way ahead of its time. It's in danger of being ignored at the time it comes out. And that was the case. And he needed to cancel it several times. And but it's so lucky for Star Trek, I think, that they managed to make that third series, because then it went into syndication. The whole thing turned into a worldwide legend, didn't it? Really. So
right. Series as in season for all of our Americans that aren't used to reading.
Yeah.
Print TV. No, you all say series. We say season because to us the series is the whole.
Well, I wouldn't worry about. I think everything you say is coming over anyway. We're saying season before long, I can tell you.
Well, it goes well. Yeah, I know. I still laugh about all the things like boot and on a car instead of the.
Yeah, I go on about that in the book, of course, because I was fascinated by it.
Well, so in your own life, then Star Trek came before your first visit to America. Yes.
God, Star Trek came when I was knee high or something.
Right. That's what I thought. So. What about Star Trek? I mean, did you even consciously think about it? I mean, is this the first time you came to America as a tourist, to Penn State, whatever? Were you surprised? Were you shocked by anything, even having grown up and just knowing? I mean, again, they're neighboring cultures. It's not like going to some where they don't even speak the language, but and some would say they don't. But was there anything about Star Trek that either prepared you for differences culturally or set you up to be surprised?
I don't think it really it set me up to be surprised or anything like that, because I think in Britain, right, we get a hell of a lot of US culture as well as Star Trek.
Right. Oh, I'm apologizing for 347. So okay.
Yeah. But we get all these shows. I mean, I was into all these West Coast shows as well, which I talk about in the book. When you were a little kid, you're fascinated. I'm fascinated by it now. Driving Lincoln Continental around and all in LA, I wouldn't mind doing that myself. But I think that I had a fairly reasonable idea. I felt in America, I don't think that Star Trek was fascinating for me because of my interest in America, my interest in technical engineering, because of my tradition of the family. And I think that it just confirmed, along with all the other shows we were watching, what's going on stateside, really. And I wasn't disappointed or shocked at all by what. Am I still? Were you okay there, Larry?
No, you're good. I was just going to give you a spotlight. Time to talk.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I blew it completely. But what happened there in the States was that I really didn't have any problems in the States in terms of finding it shocking or different or anything like that, because the cultures are so familiar somehow. So I think that the everything we saw, including Star Trek, sort of familiarized me with what it was going to be like, I suppose. I guess, but yeah.
No, when I first read the premise of the book, that's what I was thinking you'd get into, is either consciously or subconsciously thinking about the States, and then once you were really here, realizing, oh, well, that was a surprise, or oh, this is exactly what I thought, or if nothing else, oh, now this tone in Star Trek makes sense to me, that maybe, it's like, oh, that's not the future, that's just America now. I don't know. It was such an intriguing premise of the book.
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think a lot of the interactions in Star Trek are kind of what you get a little bit when you go to the States. I mean, it's a more extrovert country, if you like, than in Britain. People are more reserved in the old country, really. So you get these interactions. I talk about Kirk and Picard a lot in this book, and I think they're kind of examples of how the two countries operate. No, Picard's meant to be French, but he's actually an English actor.
Well, that's one of the weirdest oddities in the universe.
Yeah, I talk about that. I don't know. I think that was just Gene Roddenberry having 5 minutes on that. Yeah, but it's for me, it's fascinating. But the character of Kirk and the interactions of the guys is so much what you'd expect, and so much like when you go to America and work there. It's like people are very friendly, and in America, people come up to you and speak to you who don't know you, and that doesn't mean to say they're completely crazy, if you know what I mean. In the old country, there's a chance they might be. But I think that when I went there, it kind of was agreeable in the same way the show was. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well, but yeah.
Well, you saying that always makes me laugh. I had a personal, so there's a reverse to this. Now, I could even say, you could do the same thing, ask an American that's grew up with or has watched Doctor Who, either old classic or current, and how does that color your view of the UK in a way, but the thing that I think was funny to me, what was like kind of blew my brain, was when I was a teenager, they started, part of the first British invasion on TV here was when they brought Monty Python over.
Yeah.
And it was it was right about the same time that Saturday Night Live was new, and also Second City TV from Canada. But our local station that was NBC, that had Saturday Night Live, blocked it up to where they did the Saturday Night, and they jumped it where the PBS station had Python, and then we had NBC had Saturday Night Live, and then the same station bought Second City TV, with John Candy and Eugene, Andrea Martin and all that bunch, Catherine O'Hara. But they were on right after. So it was just an amazing block of all different kind of cutting edge, But the thing that got me about Python, aside from just blowing my little brain and the absurdism, was I remember at one point listening to them all talk with different accents. And then I started realizing that they were making, the English class system and making fun of that.
Yeah.
and portraying it and then turning it on its ear for all the the absurdity, the satire, but which all made total sense to an Englishman or a Scotsman or whatever. But as an American watching that, I was just like, I remember the first thing that hit me was, oh, there's more than one British accent. It's
Yeah, there's
it's like,
slightly
they
more
have
than
all this.
one.
Because I thought, well, we're a big country and we have accents all over. So when I hear you talking about drawing these conclusions about Americans, I know how diverse within a tiny, I know how diverse like Manhattan Island is. Like, they draw the neighborhoods all over Manhattan, and of course you're going to have a lot of accents and cultures crammed into just, that little square area there, that little.
Yeah.
But as a Brit coming over here to the States, you were talking about how open America, like I would say that there's a lot more openness, say like in the South or in rural areas than there are. So like in urban New York, people just trying to get up and down the street.
Yeah,
but
I wouldn't. I don't know.
Time that open people used to say how friendly the South is. Well, there's a lot of if you're in the old days and sometimes still today, it's like, well, maybe not everybody is as friendly and open as everybody else is, or people who grew up in a small town will say, yeah, everybody is smiling because everybody knows your business. So anyway, I'm just saying that there's a diversity to, obviously, to
the
breadth of America. Yeah.
You're watching Monty Python, right? You must be doing well, because that's such a crazy show anyway. Let alone, forget about the class system stuff. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, just this absolute absurdism. Yeah,
completely crazy show. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know about New York, because I was there recently.
I could be arguing in my spare time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, these troubles. You say something and immediately there's things that are different from it, aren't there? You can't really generalize about cultures and people. I suppose that's a danger that I go into in the book. But I do say that it's crazy to try and generalize. But certain things strike you, like the thing about coffee and tea. I go on about that, And
well, talk about that for a second.
Well, that's such a big deal. Tea is such a big deal in the old country, right? It has to be. You have to scald the tea, right? So when you put the tea bag's an American invention, by the way. When you put the tea bag in the cup, you've got to pour on the boiling water, right? You've got to get boiling water. If you bring the tea bag with the cup from the kitchen, if the waiter does that, and then pours on, and then you pour on that. Well, this doesn't do. Okay, so it's not hot enough. It's not. This is a major problem. Sort of, tea has to be taken seriously. There's no way. But if you go into, you won't believe how big tea is here. This is big. I know how big.
You have tea time, so start there. So
yeah, yeah, but it's like Darjeeling, Earl Grey, English breakfast tea. Well, I went once to Aspen, right, which I lovely town.
I think I read the story, but go ahead. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I went to Aspen, and this guy behind the bar, he's quite a travelled bloke actually. He's an American guy. He was talking about Robert Wagner and Hunter Thompson and people as well. But I went down to the breakfast thinking I didn't know what I was going to get. And there we are, Twining's English breakfast tea from London. So I was in my little heaven with the tea, on the tea situation. And brilliant, yeah. No, but honestly, yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, and talking about how, but Americans do that. But you were talking about coffee to America is what tea is to you.
Well, yeah, and to be honest with you, Larry, coffee is getting more and more popular over here.
Well, tea's got a lot more popular over here too. In fact, that first trip I made I was just the thing I hate is when tourists go to another country, another culture, and then they insist on just doing exactly what they would do at home. Now maybe they do in a moment, but they go somewhere to see it, and then they're annoyed because they can't live exactly like they would do it, like eat the same food, whatever. Yeah. But I was always amused when, just because I don't drink hot drinks, period. So hot tea was not a thing I would do. And I was just trying to I thought, I'll just make some iced tea, which not only I realized already from the plane in the 90s was already a thing that anybody else's airlines, not American Airlines, it blew them out of the water. Yeah. You had to beg for more than one cube of ice or something. But to do that at the Albert Hall's cafeterias, I'll never forget when I thought this through and I said, okay, you can't just order iced tea, but bring me a cup of tea and then bring me tea in the pot, I guess. And then can I have two water glasses? And can I have ice in one of them? And I knew not to make this a one-step. I knew to make it a two-step process because the tea would be really strong. And so after one time and realizing I messed up, the next time I said, can I have a second glass that's empty? and a glass of ice. And it was like I had to rob the Bank of England to get 4 ice cubes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the point was, I took the hot tea that I didn't want to wait for it to cool off, poured the hot tea over the ice, which was like a primary chiller. I feel like I'm in a warp engine. It was a primary chiller. And then I took that and poured that over some more ice and water and thinned it down a little bit. It was like a 2-stage chill because one stage would just melt the ice. And anyway, but I did this, and the waiter stood there and just watched me like I was into a new layer of the pyramids or something. It was so funny. And I wasn't trying to make a big deal. I was experimenting, but it totally now that's changed. I know that's like big time. I realized when you could get ice in any European country and it wasn't a mini revolution. People were,
I know ice is big. I know ice is big in the States, but like
well, it's hot in half of the South. It's hot. You can't just. You were talking about warm beer, and I was thinking in your book, which is cute. But I was thinking, well, Americans didn't drink warm room temperature beer because it would be hot. It's like they want something cold because it's so damn hot.
Relative. It's all relative, Larry. Right? Yeah. I had a friend in Georgia, right? I went to see him. She gave me a beer, right? But she had the glass in a freezer, right? Which, okay, now that's not too bad. But the glass had liquid freeze. You know what I mean? It had the coolant in it. It froze. If you know what I mean, there was liquid froze inside the glass. So the whole thing was served at about 0 degrees Celsius, right? 32 Fahrenheit, whatever. And I had toothache for several days after that. My feelings were destroyed by that. So, but the thing is, it's at Picard, right? He says, I'll have Earl Grey hot. Mm-hmm. Do you imagine having Earl Grey cold? I mean, I don't know much about iced tea, but what's going on there? But
I had never thought of that, except that not Earl Grey room, not kind of hot. I mean, he doesn't say very, very, very hot, but I guess that's...
No. But the fact is that someone told me once, I was walking around in Penn State in a supermarket, and someone trying to find the tea, of course, and someone told me that that Picard thing made it so big in the States. Tea took off after Picard started drinking Earl Grey, and so on. Hot tea, I mean, Yeah.
Oh, well, he was saying that's the reason. Well, what is there anything? I feel like I should. You know what? Before I forget, I want to dive into the chat. I don't know if anybody's come. I'm sure we have enough folks from around the globe. Not a ton, but we have a lot. That we may have some folks chiming in. If you've got a question for Lyndon or some other aspect of this Star Trek and cross the Anglo-American filter through a Star Trek lens, make sure and pop it in here. We'll look at it. But is there what's been the? I guess what I'm saying is, it sounded like Star Trek prepared you, like you were saying, people being more gregarious and more open and not quite as reserved. Was there anything else? Because we live in our bubble, even if we see diversity within our own bubble of the way people interact, a huge, a leap outside. Was there anything else that was like, I don't want to say shocking, but as you had your year at Penn State or traveled around, was there anything that, I don't want to say Star Trek didn't prepare you for, but that it would have been a complete surprise if not for?
I don't know. The first time I got into Salt Lake City, there was a gunfight going on the corner at the hotel.
Wait. You mean actual crime, or it was? I
think somewhat on the criminal side, and also
in Salt Lake. That's amazing.
Yeah, but I didn't see much of that in Penn State, if you know what I mean. It's not that kind of town. But the fact that they're using phasers, I suppose, makes you expect to see a little bit, that you're going to be carrying guns around. It's all that Wild West stuff, I suppose. And I talk about that in the book, the phasers and so on. But luckily, I didn't get involved in any of the gunfighting. I can tell you that. But a few shots here and there, but no, I don't know. I mean, I think America was. It's I mean, like I say in the book, it's like a push button culture. What did Ringo Starr say? It's like England, but with push buttons.
Oh yeah, yes.
I mean, I know in Star Trek, right? You couldn't get any more push button, could you? You're on the bridge, and everyththing's a button controlled with pushing a button. So it's getting me ready for that.
Your food is a button. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, food's a button. Of course, car I had, what was it? A Thunderbird. That was push button. Everything on that, which at the time seemed quite futuristic. This is all years ago, this old Thunderbird.
Yeah. I'm gonna dive into our chat room here. So Christoph is in Austria. He says ice and tea do not belong together. I do drink Earl Grey tea, but only green tea based, not that rust covered over oxidated fluid that the Brits call.
What's he saying? What is he saying? I just ignore that.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think I'm just shocked. I mean, Salt Lake and
yeah.
the background, the majority Mormon culture, and all.
I want
Although
to say,
Salt Lake is not.
let me say about Salt Lake. I've actually loved the place. I love the place. It's like a fascinating place. Anyway, the West fascinates me in general. Salt Lake is no different. I mean, absolutely fascinating. The people I dealt with, mostly Mormons, were so friendly and nice. It was great.
Sean, what are you doing here, Sean? Why does Oklahoma City have such a descriptive name, but Kansas City is so misleading? What? What? There's two Kansas Cities, though. There's Kansas City, Kansas, and Kansas City, Missouri, over the border.
That's not. Why is that misleading? Kansas City's in Kansas, isn't it?
Part of it is the bigger chunk of the larger Kansas City is KCMO, Kansas City, Missouri, but there is a Kansas City, Kansas. Okay, everybody's got off on. So I'm backtracking here. Yes, JR. In fact, the reason we have refrigeration and air conditioning, it was invented for hauling freight first on railroad cars.
Yeah,
and then somebody said maybe we can put this in homes, and right.
Yeah, well, in the States you need it, don't you? Especially in the South.
Is color, yeah. What is this? Sherry says, I guess you traveled with students. Iced tea in Great Britain or in France. What a hoot. My students were perplexed. They were not getting tons of ice for a soda, and they couldn't find iced tea. That was the late 80s, early 90s. And we're from the hot, humid South near Charlotte. I know. I'm talking about when I was there first was 94, 95, 96. But they've merged, right? That's been our globalization, wouldn't you say?
Lyndon? I remember getting into the South in 96. The Olympic Games were on, so I gave Atlantic City a huge role.
The Nemechek tea compensator. Yeah.
What I like in the South, right? You're driving around there saying, "Christ, I love your accent." So I don't necessarily object to them saying that, if you know what I mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If you, yeah. Thank you, Dave, for the shout. I mean, like, it's not my concept. It's like, but I love watching movies, like British movies or any movie that's depicting a foreign country, and there's a plot going on. It's a spy, super agent, action movie, whatever. And they have the comic relief is the bumbling American tourists who come in and they're loud. Well, it's Faulty Towers, and I want a Waldorf salad. The whole Waldorf salad thing.
You can be sure that the main baddie is going to be British bloke, okay? The actor, it's going to be.
Well, now you talked about this. This is way beyond Star Trek, but it's and somebody. Maybe it was even in our chat here, but maybe it was in the Portal 47 European session, but we were laughing because it's been an old trope here in the States that somebody walks in with a British accent. And recently it's become even like Australian too. Someone walks in with a British accent, Americans immediately think, oh, well, they're a Shakespearean scholar. They obviously know what they're, I mean, it's like they immediately attribute anything. They can say anything. And it's like, well, it's obviously vetted because he's British, has that accent. And I never stopped, but I heard someone on your side of the pond say, well, the minute an American comes on, it's elevated in stature. It's vetted just because he has an American accent. And I wanted to go, it's just some, slick, fast talking American. But to think that would just be cultural revert, which on one hand makes total. I mean, is that correct? Is that accurate?
I think that's it. These perceptions you have.
But have British commercials and advertising and announcing been taken over by Americans? I don't like the way they have.
Quite a lot of it. I would say there's as much as there is of Brits on American TV. There's a lot of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of American channels, of course, but yeah, you're right. I've noticed this myself. These perceptions that the Brits have of the Americans are similar to the inverse perception the Americans have of the Brits, and they're all sort of. These are actually average guys, probably not Shakespearean scholars.
Exactly. They have to put the disclaimer on ads. Not a real doctor, not a real lawyer.
Yeah.
So Narda is our outback angel in Australia, and she makes a good point. Many accents in Australia too.
What's funny, I think, about Australian accents is that the Yanks can't differentiate between an English and an Australian accent, is it? And
I used to be really good at it, but I've gotten really weak lately. The last year or two or three, maybe because I've heard so many and they're all just blending together. But when I feel like when there was the great thing for Australian accents, and I will another favorite here, when we got into watching Miss Fisher, the Miss Fisher mysteries, Franny, and that was all set in Melbourne in the 20s. It was shot in the aughts, but in the teens. But it was set in the 20s. Anyway, it was great to see. And they would get into issues about the Aboriginal Australians, which, the natives. So that resonated with, Native Americans in Indian state. Yeah. But anyway, they found ways to get little political bits in there too. But just hearing that diversity, and you're always going to have a rural, urban, wherever it is, that's going to be a thing. It's just, it was so stratified. With us, it was geographical. And of course I tell people that there's all kinds of Southern accents even, and there's a New York versus Jersey. I mean, there's all kinds, and if you get a linguist that can really tell the difference, it's amazing. They'll tell you where you grew up, much less where But there's the soft Southern, there's the Southern Belle Southern, but then there's the Texas Oklahoma drawl on the other end of that. So anyway, there's
a lot of that stuff, especially
nasal, in the South. Upper plain, the Fargo and the Minnesota, going into Canada, all of that.
But on the other hand, if you were in LA, right, and you went to Pennsylvania, you wouldn't sound completely different, would you? I suppose it's kind of
say again.
If you're in LA or on the West Coast somewhere, and you drove across to Pennsylvania, it's not to an English ear, it doesn't sound wildly different, you know what I mean.
Not as much, but they laugh about Pennsylvania being Pittsburgh and Philadelphia on each end, and the middle is, what do they call it, Pennsylvania or Alabama. It's like the middle of Pennsylvania might as well be in Appalachia in the South. Yeah.
Because
politically and culturally in the mountains where they So and the West, in a lot of ways, the West can be. Well, people say California and they think Hollywood, LA, but there's tons of farmland and open small towns. And of course, they all despise LA and San Francisco, and San Francisco and LA compete with each other. And, and there's a lot of melting potism going on, but then you've got Hispanic dominant culture. But then around LA, you've got a huge Asian, you've got Japanese, Chinese, there's a huge Armenian population in LA. So anyway, when you've got the immigration that hasn't fully blended, that's always going to be affecting the spectrum of culture and language, I guess.
Yeah, but taking a more simplistic, my simplistic view on things. When I go to California, I really like it, and it's somewhat laid back. The people are more laid back than, say, New York. I mean, it's obvious, I suppose, but it's kind of, it's kind of friendly and laid back. It's just kind of agreeable to. LA is so different from Britain. That's why so many Brits go there. I think it's like, it's like a different world altogether. Totally fascinating for that reason, I think. Really.
Well, so part of the reason for that is LA is a Mediterranean climate.
Yeah.
So is there anything? I don't know where these questions are coming from, but since you said that, is there anything about? I mean, have you traveled Italy, southern France, Spain, the Mediterranean side? Is there anything about the climate pushing the culture and like attitude, like you said, laid back? And I think a lot of that comes from there. Yeah. Do you see, when you talk about LA like that, do you sense some of that in the Mediterranean just because of the climate pushing culture?
So. I think that's probably a large part of it. Yeah, it's more laid back. You can play in the sunshine. Don't have to worry.
Well, the thing that struck me was I thought it was funny when I was around Germany long enough to realize kind of the cultural structure there of northern and northeastern Germany, where everything is more industrial and colder. And then you hit Bavaria, and it's almost like the north-south of America, the way they, the northern Germans look at Bavarians as the country hicks. And then they all look down, even though, and we've got Germans, we've got Austrians here, but it was interesting to me how the summer or the 2 weeks I was in Vienna and realized that whatever the Germans thought about Bavarians culturally, everybody kind of looked down on the Austrians for mangling German language. And, it was just fascinating to me to look at the spectrum and the strata of things, but to know that that's, like we're not alone. That's the same, but Southern, but then to think about climate, Southerners get kidded for talk and slow, but when it's hot and humid like that, and before air conditioning, you weren't in a hurry to do anything. You just sweat more because of the humidity, much less the heat, anyway, it's,
it's fascinating.
All those
the German thing's fascinating because Bavaria, I've been to there, and I know what you mean. It's quite laid back. it's a bit like the States in terms of being federal, I suppose. But in Europe, when you get up to the Scandinavia, things do get a bit colder in every way, if you know what I mean. It's like, so there is something in what you're saying, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. I am, let's see. I'm not, hey, Duralta. I'm missing your context because I'm going backwards. Oh, I see what you're saying. Germany started off treating Trek as a kid's show, says, but then you can see that in the dubbed version. We had far more jokes in our show than in the original, in your original German dubbing than in the original, hearing it in the original English.
Oh, really?
Gene Kuhn had nothing to do with that, apparently.
Gene Kuhn was some kind of genius, wasn't he?
Yes. I am. I know we got off on cultures and accents here. Is there something else we haven't mentioned from the book? Because I want to say, how can people get a copy if they want to? Because it's very personal. I'm just going to say that because you have some of your travels and some of your, and you do get off on a tangent here and there, but it's all interesting. But you say, but let's get back to Star Trek.
Yeah,
which is like any good conversation.
Well, I'm off on a tangent. I'll admit that a lot of the time, but I'm hoping the tangents will be amusing for people from time to time.
And so you talk about Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, go on about Holmes. Fascinating with Holmes because what the book's about really is Anglo-Americanism, really. And really Holmes could consider to be an Anglo-American character because I don't know if you're much into Poe's Dupin, Edgar Allan Poe and his Dupin character. But he had this detective who had a person with him who was not as bright as a detective, and in many ways, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson were forerunners of that, So and then Arthur Conan Doyle even acknowledges that, that acknowledges the debt he owed to Poe. So in many ways, even what is something which is archetypal British or English or London, in fact, like Sherlock Holmes, everybody thinks of Sherlock Holmes as a typical Englishman. In many ways, owes his existence to America, just like it shows how America and Britain are more intertwined on it in every kind of way, I think, and see, that way. And so I was, because Arthur Conan Doyle, who created Sherlock Holmes, was himself a big, sort of heavily interested in America. And many of the books and stories are actually set in America, largely, including the first one he wrote, where you first see Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. There we go. Heaven forbid I learned something today. Yeah.
Of course, that chimed in for me with all that data stuff, with this fixation with Holmes, and you read the entire canon, and he goes around in the next generation, doesn't he? Masquerading as Holmes and so on, which is quite amusing for me. That was really great.
Discovering it and adopting the mindset.
Yeah.
Talk about this. This is funny. Sean says Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't allowed to dub his own films into German. He's Austrian, right? Because he sounded like a hick from Alabama to German ears.
Yeah. I don't know what you could say about Arnold Schwarzenegger and films, really. But
well, we just did. Let's see here. Good. Everybody. So this is the question I was trying to get around. So thank you, Sherry. How can people get your book?
Oh, well, the book is available on Amazon in the States at Amazon.com. I got it on as a hard copy. I got it on as Kindle. And thanks for your interest. Yeah, paperback. I got carried away, as you say, with the drawings. I kind of found that therapeutic, I think. And
there's nothing wrong with art therapy at all, especially these days. No. Therapy of any kind these days.
Yeah.
Let me see. Well, listen, Lyndon, is there something else in the book? You don't want to obviously get the book away, but is there anything else that would be a good tease for people?
Well, there's quite a lot about Vegas because I like Las Vegas. I go there.
Okay. A lot of Star Trek fans now know a lot about Vegas.
I went to the Vegas experience in the Hilton there, right? And luckily before they shut it down. And the whole thing was completely fascinating. I mean, and also, the whole experience of Vegas being an extreme experience which is beyond what you could normally have in the UK and such like, and like
Eiffel Tower, Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building.
Yeah, all in one street, all in one little area. And yeah, we go. So Vegas is a town. I talk about it quite a bit as being like a model for America, or a model for what America could be if it was more extreme, if it wasn't, in certain ways, and not necessarily. Again, that chimes in with certain episodes, which I felt like the Royale in The Next Generation, which is quite fascinating, and when they're in the hotel there, and talk about because the whole Las Vegas thing is also talking about theme parks as well, like Universal City, and in terms of, they're also a model for getting away from reality, I guess, or having extreme experiences. And they, like mentioned in Shorley, for example, in the original series. And,
right. Well, that vibe of what a vacation, and Spock saying, "I stop working and I rest, and that's all I need." And
well, the whole thing at the end, Spock likens it to a theme park, and that show is such a great show, that particular one, from the first series. And I talk also about, other, talking about, when it comes to the original series of Star Trek, I think their highlight, in my view, was the first and second series, I guess. But for example, City on the Edge of Forever, that for me encapsulates many things about Star Trek, about the charm of the show, and Anglo-Americanism again with Joan Collins, and the whole issue with the Second World War. Because in Britain, people are quite obsessed with the Second World War, and anything to do with it like that is kind of interesting. So you got
That's amazing, because you can't find anything about the Second World War in the States. It's just amazing. It's just disappeared from the zeitgeist.
Well, in the UK, everybody's obsessed with it.
I'm kidding.
All right, okay.
There's a whole joke about, like every other channel is Hitler and his generals, Hitler and his underwear, God. Hitler and his, or whatever, or Patton in this, or no, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, my dad was a veteran, was in the Third Army, was at Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge. So no, I have a good. So I kind of look beyond my own personal slant when I look at the code. But no, World War II is alive and well, and probably even growing.
Well, as far as I can see, America, as I say, it's obsessed with it in the UK. In the States, what happened in, say, 1944 is in many ways, I think, a metaphor for Star Trek, or Star Trek's a metaphor for it. I mean, you've got a situation, the American war machine, doing something apparently incredible, like getting a man on the moon. It's like Star Trek. It's like going beyond what you might think is possible into something that's futuristic and incredible. So that's part of the fascination with it. Over here, where in the Second World War, overcame 80,000 American soldiers. So that also had a big influence on the culture, I think.
Right. Right. And we can talk to the Germans about this too after the war as well. But yeah, all the war brides of everywhere, French too. Yeah.
But what happened, I think, also is because obviously English-speaking countries were,
right.
After that war, for that reasons of America, particularly with Anglo-Saxon culture, sort of dominated world culture as well, I think. And that is something, especially popular culture. Actually, I think that's kind of interesting. My father was very keen on Glenn Miller, right, and so on, and all that stuff. And it's been gone on since then, I suppose. Big exportation of exporting popular culture very successfully to the world, really, and the language, I guess.
And there's outright colonialism and imperialism, like your soldiers are on our turf, but there's also culture. I mean, I used to apologize when we started touring around Germany and Czech Republic, or Czechia, I guess it is now, and Austria and Germany and France and UK. And, there's a Burger King on every block, or there's a Taco Bell on every block. And I'm like, guys, don't blame me. I did not. Please don't blame me for this. It's almost like economic cultural. And it's a lot more insidious than that. But those are just the public,
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the UK, malls are becoming more and more popular, right? And it's an American thing, I suppose.
What is?
Malls, you pronounce it in the States, do you? Malls, shopping malls.
Oh, malls. Yes.
So they're becoming more and more popular, right, all over the place. So they're developing all over the place. And American friends of mine who come over and say, it's a shame they're developing these malls, because we want to see something different. We want to see some little English shops.
Well, yeah. That was, what was it? Oh, the first time we were in Germany, we land, and some of this is like you bring your tourist naivety with you, naivete. And we landed, and I said, what do you want to do? And I said, we want to go to a German beer garden, like a real beer garden. And all the Germans were like, to them, a beer garden was a thing out in the sticks where it was hot and uncomfortable. And you know, it's like, don't you want to be inside? And because it was like October and it was unseasonably warm and humid, which was strange. But I remember we were just saying, no, we want to go to a real German beer garden. And they were like, okay. So at some point we went out to, you know, and it was fine. It was exactly what we wanted to do. But they were like, oh. But that's good. That knocks you out of your, you know, your local, having a local host sometimes is great, but sometimes it does that.
Yeah, was that anywhere near Munich at all, was it?
No, it wasn't that far. No, we were up in the north. We were in the Ruhr. I mean, it was Dusseldorf and up that way.
Oh, yeah.
So Bochum and up over there. But it was like, just pull over at the side of the road and go to a little, you know, but they were like, oh, I can imagine that would be like being home and somebody says, no, I want to go out in the country. I want to go out with the Hicks and go to a beer joint. That would be the equivalent now. An old school Okie beer joint where they, you know, you go in and it's a concrete block, cinder block rectangle building. And there's 4 or 5 pickups pulled up outside. And anyway, on a dirt parking lot. And
yeah,
I realized that was the equivalent for them of doing that. But anyway, we did it and experienced it, and it was great.
yeah.
Listen, let me do that. There we go. This is so good, Linda. Listen, if there's let me get one parting thing in here. If there's anything we haven't talked about that people would love about the book, what would it be?
I think it might be, you know, what I tried to, you know, I was always interested in engineering, as I was talking about. And there's so many gadgets and things in Trek, as you know. And I tried to go through, and in the other book, I talk about going faster than light and the cloaking device. Okay, so that's in the first book. But I talk about all these things, and I'm talking about how likely they are to actually occur in our lifetimes. And I kind of think that's interesting because a lot of stuff has come through from Star Trek, but a lot hasn't, and I kind of think people might be interested in all these gadgets and technologies and what chance there is possibly of them actually being realized. Really, I just hope if anybody reads it, thanks for the interest in it, and I hope you guys, you know, enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it, because I really did.
I'll say it's as I got into it, it felt more like I don't want to say a personal essay because that sounds snooty, but I mean it was just kind of a personal travelogue, and you just kind of roll these ideas out, and sometimes you take a turn, but that was all cool. You always come back. But yeah. I did enjoy it, and I feel like I love having our global fandom here, like just in my community, much less in Star Trek anyway, because it's so great. It just gets you out of your own ruts again and keeps you honest. And it's great to realize how much we still have in common, even as the differences pop up and makes us all unique. I mean, that's the core of Star Trek, right? It's celebrating we are alike enough to be together, but different enough to not be stale and not to just be a monochrome, not just.
I think that Roddenberry said that's the thing we got to worry about, just turning into some sort of monoculture, monochrome.
Yeah. And some of the reactionary, you know, just broad brushing here, but a lot of the reactionary forces in the world right now that are in fear of, forget being, you know, politically correct or woke or whatever. It's like they're just in fear of looking for something new. You know, they just want to go to their small town or go back in their cave. And it's like, well, okay, but, you know, ultimately that means you're going to stagnate. That means that's what a backwater is in a pond. You know, that's the stagnant water that doesn't get out and mix in this. I just like, what is so alien about this concept? What about this you don't get? Of course, we need to always be refreshing the bloodline if you want to get weird about it. But it's like you always should be taking in the new anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
but the thing is, Larry, England's a very, very conservative country, and America, I went over there. You know, it's also very conservative, isn't it? But the small C, you know, sort of socially conservative. And
but it is changing over time. I mean, if Ice-T and Ice Cube is a barometer, you know, it's like all things do eventually evolve and change. So yeah. Anyway, well, listen, Lyndon, thank you so much. I'll show it one more time, the book. And again, it's hard copy, but also Kindle. People can get e-versions, right? And it's just look for it on Amazon with your name, right?
Yeah, it's fine. That's
awesome.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today. It's great to talk, and I will let you go because I know it's obviously late, as it is for all of our folks on the island and on the continent too. But
Yeah.
thanks again it's great to meet. And if I ever get over that way, or next time you're over this way, we'll meet up.
You're always welcome at our place in sunny Somerset.
Okay, great.
I'll take you to I'll take you to Glastonbury.
Okay. Yeah, stock up on the ice cubes before I get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Larry. Really appreciate it.
All righty, everybody. Well, that was interesting and fun. And again, it's something a little bit like, and again, part of having guests here on, that's been almost 2 in a row. That's amazing. Yeah. So I don't know if I missed anything in the question chat. It's good to see everybody popping in as awesome. Josh Patton, I saw you laughing about my mention of Patton. Yes. And to paraphrase a famous line, a couple of lines from All in the Family, I say, my dad fought with Patton. And then somebody else says, yeah, your dad couldn't get along with anybody. It's an old Mike and Archie line, excuse me. Let's see. I'm not going to try to go back. You guys had great conversations going along through here. Here in the last few minutes, if you want to pop in something for me or something immediate here, go ahead. I do just want to say this is going to be an atypical guest format, but here's the thing. So it's great to have Barry on. I have a couple of announcements, nothing earth-shaking. I'm about to take, this is the end of January, and we are going to take a hiatus through the month of February on Trekland Tuesdays Live. So I love our little gatherings here on Tuesday afternoon or evening, depending on which side of the pond you are. I'm going to be taking a month off because we are relocating Trekland. Yeah, we're physically moving. We actually finally, I didn't want to talk about it anywhere outward. It's, personal business, but it's, how it is when you do it's, we're going to be sane here and just check out of a lot of ordinary things so we can tear things down so we can get where we're going. Anyway, we'll still be in Southern California. We'll be a little more suburban, a little more out, but still very much here in the heart of SoCal and in this general area, still involved with everything I'm involved with, including Star Trek, including Will Rogers out at the park. So you can still come and see me doing tours and stay up with you still expect to hear news on that from me. But while we are off the air here on Trekland Tuesdays Live through February, I do want to say, and I don't have fancy graphics, I don't have fancy signs anyway, but coming up this month, you do know there's a couple of big events, especially for the world audience. So Virtual TrekCon number 4 is coming up February 15th through the 19th. Yeah, 5 days. It's like 50th anniversary STLV. 5 days. This year, I'm proud to be part of VTC on Thursday and Friday. So on Thursday the 15th at 3:30, we've got it's the 60th anniversary year of producing, writing, and filming The Cage. So even though it never aired, obviously, the first pilot for Star Trek, and I'm thrilled. Sabrina Wood from Sci-Fi Sisters and Mr. John Champion and myself are on a panel talking about The Cage and its impact and all that, along with, I want to say, I could be wrong here, but I want to say one of the last survivors from the ensemble. Ms. Gimple. No, one of the Telosians, I've had her on Portal 47, all of that is going to be our guest. So we'll actually have Sandy will be a living link to the actual production of The Cage. She was in every scene. She was like the number 3 Telosian, but can talk about that. We lost Robert Butler a year or two ago. Some of you who were lucky enough to be in Portal 47 when we had him as a guest there, or to see him live when we were actually down at San Diego Comic-Con the year before the pandemic. But so no, Sandy wasn't part of the whole production, but it's great to have her with us and talk about Gene and Bob Butler and the production and the vibe and the Telosian. Of course, Sandy was also, when they went to production, was the Salt Vampire stunt woman, still working as a stunt woman. She's amazing, amazing, amazing. And if you've not heard her virtually or on a panel or seen her live at a con, take the chance to do it because she's amazing. So anyway, that's happening Thursday at 3:30 Pacific. Okay, 6:30 Eastern, yada, yada, on Thursday the 15th. And then Friday the 16th, not Saturday, but Friday the 16th at 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. I promised you at least once a year, a reunion special. Yes, it's a Life Support Live reunion. We've done this the last 3 virtual treks, and the last 2 have been reunion specials. So we at least get together for virtual Trek Con. Dr. Ali and Dr. Trek, and one of us is a real doctor, once again, doing a full-blown old school regular format the way we used to do on Saturday mornings during the pandemic. If you never got to a Life Support Live, we haven't picked the theme yet, but you know that we will be running that hour and a half the way we used to run the live stream on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific for 2 years. So yay! Dr. Ali and I will be back doing Life Support Live, which is a mental health mashup with Star Trek. Mental health through a Star Trek lens or Star Trek through a mental health lens. But we always had a lot of fun, never dreary. Takeaways. There's always hopefully some new backstage Trek from me and a lot of just helpful everyday insights. And we always geek out on plenty of Star Trek. And we always would take the input and enjoy our chat community there. They're the lifers. And yes, drinking game rules will be in effect. But that will be at not 10 a.m. That will be at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 Eastern. What is that? 8:30 UK time on Friday the 16th. So Thursday the 15th, Friday the 16th, I will be on with you live and blazing online. And then if you're in Los Angeles or headed that way, on Saturday the 17th, I'm going to be live at Gallifrey 1, the annual Doctor Who convention that's now in its 34th year. I've got a panel at the Token Trek panel is at 10:30, and then I have a signing hour at noon. So if you're headed that way, I'll be there. And then, yeah. And then some other stuff happening after that. So I'll be off the air on Thursday, on Tuesdays live through the month of February. We'll be back, assuming something blows up along the way. I mean that figuratively, not literally. I'll be back on our next Tuesday's Trekland Live on Tuesday, March 5th. All right. But yes, taking the month of February off. So there's that. Now, having said that, thank you for the folks that were, hopefully, as you've seen even the last few weeks here, we're kind of growing things at Trekland. So I want to for sure thank all of our Patreon folks. Well, it's the end of the month. Hey, you could jump in today and be in this month's Patreon. But meanwhile, I'm going to thank Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Joshua Patton, one of our new Patreon folk, Justin Porteous, Galinda Bruton, Chris Jiggins, Pranakasha Productions, Comedy Forecast, and Andrew Jasimski, and our live wires there. Robert McLean, Byron Bailey, J.R. Poole, Habir Gunyonson, Alan Hwenzi, Dave Gregory, Tobias Rex, Donna S. Runyon, Greg Wickstrom. Thank you, Greg, for joining in too. And Casey Shafsky, of course. That is all our folks on our Patreon. If you don't know Patreon, it's a way to support your favorite creatives, whatever they do, in one-off projects or as an ongoing support. So I appreciate that. There's my simple system, $5, $10 a month. Patreon.com/TreklandLive is where you can find that. And I very much appreciate it. Now, I'm going to be in a little bit of an uproar in the next month. Thank you, Real Trek World, for not doing anything this month new. Thank God we didn't have Prodigy jump in this early or even Discovery. But it'll be a month away from a lot of Trek headlines, new episodes anyway. But I'm not going far. I will always be online. We'll jump in if something needs to jump in, or even a second opinion if there's something to react to. But thank you, Real Trek Universe, for not cluttering up February for me. But that also means that, hey, we are still very much in the service of offering you treklandtreks.com. So if you're coming to LA, if you've got an extra day to spare, business or pleasure, and you want to take your own real life away mission that you plan, get in touch with me. All right. There's over 50 location sites, not stages, but well, we can go to the stages and look at them. You can go to Paramount and say, here's where all the storied original series and Berman era happened. And we're even getting down the Picard series locations, right? The studios were up at Santa Clarita, but we're doing that too. So one thing though, that's LarryNemechek.com or TreklandTreks.com. One thing that will not change in the upcoming month is trooping right along every week, a new Trek Files. We're in our midway. We're hitting the midway point of the 11th season. A new one up today. Want to go over and see it? The great, the awesome Dr. Mohammed Noor is our guest this week with the document is from a fan who was a science undergrad student from 1974. So between the nonfiction side and the science side and a student in education, Mohammed was a great person to have in. A lot of you love him from everything he does over with the Seventh Rule, with VTC, with all of the Ryan gang over there, and his own Trekkie channel. Anyway, that's our guest this week. We will be rolling right along all through February as we head down the back end of our 11th season. All right. So there's a new Trek Files every week, even as we are off here. So it'll be Tuesday 1/1 for a month. All righty. Otherwise, you know where I am. It's Larry Nemechek still on X Twitter. The other ones I've started to do a little more on Threads. We'll see how that goes. But if you're there, look around for me. Larry Nemechek's Trekland. Again, please like and subscribe here on the channel. Please share. Sharing is good too, but always ring the bell and click in if you would too. And of course, on Facebook and on Instagram, we may have some moving sagas as we go along. Portal47.net. You've heard me talk about it. It's your mini-con all year long. Tonight for the Portales, that's the other thing. Portal 47 folks, you Portales, we'll have a regular Portal 47 schedule. So we'll have regular Ask Dr. Trek roundtables for the Prime over here and for the European and the midday crowd through February on the 7th and on the 14th. And then we'll have our guest at the end of February. Someone's penciled in, but you'll know. All righty. So Portal 47 will proceed for all the Portales, and we will have Trek Files all through the month of February. And I will see you all at Virtual TrekCon for the Thursday and the Friday. And if you're at Gallifrey, I'll see you on Saturday. All right. What was the other? I was about to say something and I dropped it. But anyway, that's going on, and we'll be back here. We will be back here on Tuesday, March 5th. All righty. Anyway, thank you all for the support all the time. It's awesome. Trek keeps evolving, as we have seen today with the news about Section 31. What's going to happen in this year? We're all still waiting to see where Prodigy lands over on Netflix, what time of year that is. The convention season is going to be unwinding. We'll see what happens with that. You can still check out our TeePublic store if you want your own Trekwell glass or your own hashtag whatever. Oh, I'm totally off kilt over it. I've totally cut out the hashes. There you go. You want the hashtag stack on anything? There you go. It's all there. They have sales at least twice a month. So just be paying out for that, be looking for that, paying attention. Anyway, it's so great to see everybody. I don't know if we got into any great, did we get into any great chat conversations? Everybody's thrilled to see Dr. Ali again. Hey, Dr. Ali has he has renamed his YouTube channel from The Psych Show to just Ali Matu. But you can find him, and he's still cranking out great content. He's kind of focusing on anxiety and some more everyday helps for people living in a stressful world. So he is very much there. Yes. Thank you. So thank you, Cairo, there. Boom. Everybody's excited for all those announcements. Yay. Thank you. Hey, Jim, you betcha. There you go. Oh, Sherry, don't worry. Where I go, Plushy McCoy will be right there with me. Don't you worry about Plushy. but thank you for asking. He's he's a soft toy, not a doctor, but he appreciates your sentiment. And yeah, I know, Melanie. I know it's a lot to ask, but hopefully we'll all be there. Hey, you'll have me and Dr. Ali midway through February. Okay, there you go. Yes, JR. Make sure and drink, whether your drink is tea or coffee or whatever it is in that mug. Make sure and be stocked up. Exactly. I can't wait. Yeah. Just some goodbyes. Hey, if you're watching this later, don't forget, as I said, we do this live. So thank you for joining us here on YouTube. But come by when we resume in March. Try to make it here live on a Tuesday, would you? We've got a lot of fun things planning. And I think it's the end of the chat as we know it. Very, very good. Thank you, everybody. Hey, thank you. Thanks a lot to, one more time here, shout out. Thanks a lot to Lyndon Smith. Find it on, how about that? There we go. Find it on Amazon and his other book as well. And we will call it there, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, stay healthy. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check your sources. Okay. And yeah. Trek well, everybody. We will see you at Virtual TrekCon 4 in a couple of weeks. And if not then, or live at Galley in LA. And if not, then we'll see you back here on Tuesday, March 5th. All right. Trek well.